Well, hi everybody. You sure you people want to sit all the way back there? Come on away. That's fine. I can handle it. But, yeah, it's always good to come back. I think it was a year. I was here a year ago, maybe roughly. I don't remember what we talked about. Hi, Eric. The mic doesn't work. It doesn't work. So I'm going to do like Jesus. Be high up and look down at everybody. So.
You need an introduction or you want that?
No, I'm fine. He's going to introduce you.
I had a funny Go ahead.
So, right, so this is officially not going to work. I'm not going to. I just need a prop.
I got it.
Yeah, so, all right. Let's talk about stuff. Ready? All right. So, I teach undergrads, right? I teach college students. I teach at Eastern University. My name is Pete Enns, by the way. Some of you know me or what. And I just, I can't assume they actually like Christianity. Even though I teach at a Christian college, I can't assume that because they've had a life of struggling with things they've heard. And I can't always assume they like the Bible very much either. And I sort of have to win them over. So I usually ask them questions at the beginning, like, what don't you like about the Bible? And even a bigger question than that, like, what are the kinds of things that make you not even want to stay Christian? And that usually gets a lot of good responses. And actually, I want to ask you that. If anybody wants to say, what, if you think of like the things that just sort of stick in your head that annoy you about this Christian faith, however you define the Christian faith, right? Things that just sort of stick in your head that make you wonder, I can't think about this too much. I will wait, yes, go ahead.
I would say probably biblical literalists.
Yeah. So it's sort of like, is it people who read the Bible literally, or is it just the Bible itself that does weird stuff?
Well, both.
A little both, right? And then people who say you have to take that literally, that's like a double whammy almost. Yeah.
All the violence in the Bible.
The violence. That is probably the most common thing that these young people say to me. That,
The Old Testament.
yeah. Well, the news got its share of it. The news has a little bit of violence in it too.
Crucifixion.
Like the book of Revelation is no cakewalk. But yeah, it's like, right, by chapter 6, everybody drowns. That's pretty much the way the story begins. It's like, what do you do with it, right? So yeah.
The I'm right, you're wrong mentality.
Within the Bible or just in Christianity? Which is fine. Either way is fine.
Well, yes. I say that it is written in the Bible.
Yeah.
That this is the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
how do you relate to people who come from a completely different
Right. Yeah.
mindset?
They don't have that same mindset at all. Their whole world is in a completely different place. And how do you connect with people like that? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And Jesus' words that said, only through me can you have eternal
Right.
life.
Yeah, exactly.
What's that?
You don't like that? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. For me, it was getting to know Jews in graduate school that sort of made me think differently about what I assumed and how I was raised. And that, to me, that raised a big question in my mind is, what is God like? I mean, what kind of a God are we talking about here? So, yeah. That's tough. Yeah.
The hatred of Jews and other groups because they're not Christian.
Yeah. And yeah, and other groups too. A lot of groups, right? It's a lot of bad press. I mean, most Christians I know actually don't hate people, but on the news, just the public persona is very different, I think, than that. So, yeah. But what else? There are like, I'll help you if you can't think of something. Slavery within the Bible, and even the Christian condoning of slavery. Okay, so yeah.
Christians putting on a show constantly. We can't. It's like we can't ever be real with me.
Yeah.
It's constantly
Putting on a show.
Yeah, they're trying to be Christian, or what they consider Christian.
And then when you say things like that to them, they say, brother, I'm going to pray for you.
Right.
We couldn't hear what he said.
That Christians, just putting on a show and not being just transparent and authentic and genuine, it's sort of like almost like you're acting something out. Which is what I like about the college students, because they don't act anything out, they just don't care. They're actually telling you what they think. They also don't care on the test, so that's another thing.
What I don't like about the Christian religion is the crucifixion.
Why?
You were saying earlier about, what is the nature of God and who is this?
Right.
Just that whole concept of, in order to save us, he had to be crucified.
God loves
That's
you so
it.
much that he sent his son to die a miserable death, and if you don't accept that, he'll send you to hell.
Well, it's not even the second part, but yeah, that's bad too.
Well, that's interesting, that is another one of those points that people pick on all the time, and I get it. The thing is, in the Bible, there are different ways of looking at that. Even within the Bible, there's not one way of looking at what crucifixion even means, which I think is really interesting. The Bible is not monolithic. It's actually very diverse in a lot of these things, and I find that to be actually strangely comforting.
I guess my point is, it seems like there could be a better way.
Is there another plan?
There could be a better way to save our sins
Yeah.
than to put himself through that,
Right.
and then place upon us for the next couple of millennia the guilt of having been responsible for his crucifixion.
Right, and I think, I'm not trying to defend anything, but you're articulating one not uncommon way of understanding what the cross is. There are many other ways that I think that's a whole other class. We can get into that forever. I'm supposed to talk about Psalms eventually, but that's an issue. That's why, violence in the Bible, there's an act of violence that's supposed to fix everything, and that's the crucifixion. That is an obstacle for people. So that's a couple other hands up there. Yeah.
One thing that really turns me off and makes it very hard for me to even approach and begin to read the Bible again is like proof texting, taking one
Yes.
reading of one small little piece and blowing that into a whole theology and a whole
Right.
understanding of the world.
And that is what God thinks. And if you don't think what I'm saying, which is what God thinks, then you're wrong. Yeah. That's a big question of, what's the Bible there for? What does it do? And is it there for us to find a verse here or there? Is that really what's going on, or is there something more happening? I think there's a lot more happening, but that is a common obstacle to it. Yeah.
I have trouble with the abrupt change in mood from the Old Testament to the New Testament. I'm trying to think of this as the same God.
Right.
The God of plagues and pestilence suddenly tells us everything is peace and love, and it's very hard to make that transition.
Yeah. Stop it with your problems, okay? This is getting. Yeah.
I was just thinking, the Old Testament, you have so much violence.
Yeah.
Mass killings. And in the New Testament, you have it personalized.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. One person. Yeah, it's interesting. The Old Testament, you have people sacrificing to appease God. And one way of looking at the crucifixion is God offering the sacrifice on our behalf so that we don't have to do that anymore. It's almost like putting an end to a certain kind of violence, which is, back to your point, one way of looking at the crucifixion which is an interesting way of looking at it, I think. At least it opens doors for discussion about what's even going on here. But the theme of violence here is very prominent. So, yeah.
Just seems things sorry.
Okay.
This has been made so complex, and I like to push it aside and just try to find Jesus
Yeah.
and listen to Jesus, but all the different takes on meant this, he meant that. And the only other thing I want to say was Rabbi Marks was here 2 weeks ago, and I didn't realize that the Jews don't really see the Old Testament as the Word of God in the same way. It's stories and it's history, yeah. And so I kind of find that helpful.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've learned a lot from Jewish perspectives and how I think about the Bible. So, yeah.
I'm bothered a little bit by how the Bible itself was formed. And the mere act of saying that these books are in and all these books are out, how political that was, and how much that violated Jesus' view that, love everybody.
Yeah.
It became tribal very early and very strongly.
Which is ironic,
Yeah,
right? Because it's not supposed to be tribal.
right.
A lot of people got beat up over these things too, and these literally like fist fights in councils. Some things haven't changed though. That's the same thing.
I'm curious if your students have this perspective. Just as you could say, oh, we should study Jesus because of the great man theory, as opposed to divinity. The Bible's the creation of man, and it's a great literature. But we call it the Holy Bible, so we have this paradigm that it has something from our specialty. Just a book. Just a book, just like other books, it's worthy of study, but that's all. Do they have that?
I think for the most part, no, that's a little bit too thoughtful. I mean, I don't mean to say it in a snide kind of way towards the students, but I think when you're 18, like, you can't find the Gospel of Matthew. Somebody's good. And it's a whole different kind of line of discussion, but, they're part of the modern world too. One thing that we talk about when we talk about the Bible is how there's a context for these things of the world in general, back then, and you can see similarities in how, and there's overlap between how they thought about the world and how, the Assyrians thought about the world, or the Babylonians or the Egyptians, and that's getting at that same thing that you're talking about. So, yeah.
This is probably not an issue with Episcopalianism, but with a lot of evangelicals, the issue is science or archaeology. So they see the Bible saying one thing, the archaeology is saying something different. Or see the Bible saying one thing, and science is saying something different.
Anybody else have a problem with science of the Bible? Not a lot, but a few, yeah. For me, that was a big one. And, for some people it's like evolution, but for me it's like the size of the universe. Like, what do you do with that? Nothing. You shut up is what you do. Because it's what can you possibly add to the conversation when you've got these things, and then we declare God is like this, but not like this. It's sometimes hard to you get a lot of cognitive dissonance between this faith that's rooted in an ancient text and the fact that we're living in a time and place where we don't have the same kinds of assumptions. Well, I think, you're all hitting on big issues, and there are others too we could talk about, but I think the main point I want to make by bringing these up is that it's okay. And I think being honest is a good thing for our formation as spiritual beings. I think being a Christian, this is something that's lost in Christianity. That's a broad statement, I should say. It's lost in expressions of Christianity I'm familiar with. And maybe if you're familiar with too. Being able to just be honest with God about the things that bother you. And I know, again, speaking of my students and a lot of other people I know, it's like you can't bring this to God in prayer or in contemplation, or you can't talk to a pastor about it. By the way, Mary, these people have a lot of questions and problems. What do you do? Now, maybe he's doing a good job because you're asking these questions. But it's the issue of can you be honest with God? And there are plenty of reasons to have questions about your faith. And I think that's first of all, it's a normal thing, because we could do this very same thing in any church, anywhere, even the most fundamentalist church. It just might take them 3 hours before they start talking, and the pastor has to go away. But they say the same things because they're concerned about things too. And I think that's just a part of our being human. And yeah, I guess, why is it that it's sometimes hard to express yourself honestly? That's a good question. All sorts of reasons. Usually it's fear of being called out. Maybe a fear of not being spiritual enough because you're asking questions you shouldn't be asking. And I've gotten that. I know people who have gotten that a lot when they were younger, saying, real Christians don't ask that question. What do you do with that? When my daughter, I have 3 kids, 30, 27, and I'll get it, give me a second, 24. My youngest, I think I know their names. Give me a minute. But when Sophie, when she was the youngest, when she was 16 years old, she went through sort of a phase. We here to raise teenagers, right? So I'm not the only one who hasn't had a teenager. Somebody's had teenagers there, right? When she was 16, my daughter did not worship the ground I walked on. Shocking. And I know that because she wouldn't friend me on Facebook. And then she did, but then she unfriended me for no reason whatsoever. So I was sort of devastated. So and she was clearly agitated with me about something, right? So I just happened to, after months of this, it seemed like forever, she was coming out of her room, I was coming out of my bedroom, and we sort of just met in the hallway for a second, this awkward moment. And I just said, Sophie, what's going on here? What's happening? Because we're not talking, you seem irritated with me. Tell me, be honest with me, what's going on? And she just thought about it for a second, and she looked at me and she goes, I don't like you very much. And then she went down the steps, and that was it. Right? So I'm like, I failed, as a father. But I remember talking with a friend of mine about that, and maybe 10, 15 years ahead of me in this whole parenting thing. And I told him what happened. He said, good for you. What do you mean good for me? Because she trusts you enough to be honest with you, to know that you're not going to throw her out of the family when she says that to you. And I've written about this in one of my books, so I don't mind talking about it. I have my daughter's permission too. My other daughter, who's about 3 years older than Sophie, she was at this point in time sent away. She was in Arizona in a therapeutic boarding school for 14 months. And of course that weighed on her little sister tremendously. So the same thing going to happen to me. But even in the midst of that, she trusted me enough to be honest with her. Right? So my friend said, that's tremendous parenting. I'm like, all right, pretty cool. From a loser parent to father of the year kind of thing. But it did strike me immediately that how about being honest before God with exactly what we're thinking or feeling, which some people have trouble with. And maybe you're not in the same place as some people that I talk to, but I know just, reading the Psalms is if you want a cure for having to be a perfect person or a believer, just read the Psalms. And it's amazing the kinds of things that these writers say that you could not get away with in most churches. They go for, actually, I don't have any handout here because I didn't feel like it. But I'm assuming you have the Psalms memorized. Okay, let's go.
52 and 107 are my favorites.
Huh?
52 and 107.
52 and 107, but I hate those, so we're not going to do those. For example, we're not going to read all these, but just one example is Psalm 44. And this is a psalm that basically the psalmist goes very positive. He starts positive, like he's buttering God up or something. So, hey, we've heard these great stories from days of old when you would rescue our people from their enemies. And you were just the best. You were right there helping us when we need their help. And it's just fantastic to know you. Thank you very much. We've got some enemies around here, too. So how about showing up for us every once in a while? No, I mean it. How about, where are you? How many people have asked that question at some point in their lives, right? And how many people feel, again, church contexts differ, but how many people feel comfortable in let's say, a small gathering of people from church That's a hard thing to say in front of people. And did you have this stuff in the Bible? And then actually it goes on like this. It says, you've rejected us. We're just a taunt. You have broken us in the haunt of jackals and covered us with deep darkness. Now, if I had forgotten your name, oh God, I can understand that, but I haven't. I haven't forgotten your name. I'm still waiting for you to show up. And then at the end it says, and the English stinks in the Bibles, but it says, rouse yourself. Why do you sleep, O Lord? Awake, do not cast us off forever. That's towards the end of the song. Basically, wake up. You're sleeping. That's like accusing God of something. This is getting right in God's face, I think. It's not, you're not supposed to talk like that, are you? About God, but yet there you have it in the Bible.
The Bible, what do you think that does for their movement at large?
I think, that's a very good question.
Would you
Evangelicalism
repeat the
is
question?
teaching students from an evangelical background, like maybe different ways of looking at the Bible, what does that do to the movement, maybe for the future or something like that? Well, first of all, I don't think I have that much influence over, a few students. Some of them listen, some of them don't. But I think evangelicalism is really, it's a moving target. It's like there's a real battle about who gets to define what it is. And personally, I just don't care. And I don't really see myself ideologically in that world, but neither do a lot of my students either. They want to get away from their parents in a sense and sort of make this their own. But, by and large, I think it's healthy for them to sort of handle the Bible the way it's actually acting and working and respecting the text that way. Instead of, we're right. Now, here's how you read the Bible because we know we're right. That's sort of what they grew up with. But we'll see. Who knows the future, what's going to happen.
They tend not to, very evangelical, tend not to even send their kids to school for fear this kind of thing is going to happen.
Exactly right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
you're sort of perpetuating that.
Well, yes, it's what I do. I think, because this is actually an interesting sociological kind of thing in our country, right? Because evangelicalism is sort of big, but Trump's not evangelical. He's not even a fundamentalist. He's an opportunist. Anyway, but there are, you've got the Franklin Graham on one end, and you've got like Sojourners on the other end who are like feeding people. And and they're all sort of evangelical in some sense. But I think the younger kids today, they're not driven by the labels as much. Okay? For example, just very quickly, one of our students came out on Facebook 3 years ago, great guy. And he said, listen, just how I want to do it, I'm deciding I want to come out this way, blah, blah, blah. 300 comments from Eastern students, every single one of them just said, we love you, thank you, this is fantastic. And I'm reading these comments like, hey, you think the world's 6,000 years old. I know what you think. Or you think Moses wrote the Pentateuch, for heaven's sake. But what's going on here? See, the label that divided maybe a previous generation, where you can't be evangelical and think back. For a younger generation, actually, it's the community that means more than some of these doctrinal. So it's shifting in front of us. And I think I could go away tomorrow and I would have no more or less impact on this. I think it's more just young people saying, this is stupid. This doesn't make any sense to me. My kids look through all that stuff too. Like with my daughter, just this is stupid. This doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make much sense to me either, to be honest with you. But again, it's the right. I want to teach those kids and my own, who are now adults, to take, to accept the sacred responsibility of actually journeying in their faith, which means honest asking of questions, because people ask questions, period. If you don't, you're missing something. There's a lot of stuff, to be asking questions about. And I think that's actually an expression of faith, like the psalmists, not evidence that you don't really have faith, right? Which is how it's normally taken in some circles. Yes?
I think one of the things that no fairness. I think if the world seemed to those of us who try to analyze everything, that it was more fair. Why does Stephen Hawking have to spend his,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
it's the fairness of it,
Mhm.
which there isn't any. And if we saw more fairness and related it to God, it would make more sense to us.
Right.
But that's not how it is.
And can I only say that that question is older than the Bible? That's the from the beginning of recorded humanity, were there any sort of religious inclinations, ancient Babylonians and Sumerians, this question is basically why do bad things happen if the gods are in control? And then when you only have one God, you've just compounded the problem. Because you can't blame it on some other God getting mad at this God and causing chaos. And it's like, if you're all good, you know, and all that kind of stuff, why do these things happen? And I think the only answer Christianity has, at least it satisfies me, is that in some mysterious way that humans can't really understand, God participates somehow in human suffering. That's another way of looking at the cross. It's God participating willingly in the human suffering, even in death, which is irrational, ridiculous. I would never think this up, right? I think to me that's, but you still, I mean, you know, I was at a funeral yesterday, a 34-year-old guy who died, he had epileptic seizure and didn't wake up one morning. One of my colleagues' sons. And as I'm online and I'm giving her a hug, she goes, "We're going to have to talk about something." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know what's coming." So, you know, and I will. And I don't know, I won't answer the question for her, but at least remind us all that we're not the first people to ask those kinds of questions. And welcome to humanity. And welcome to Christianity, I think. Well, it's 12:13. What do you think, Barry?
Pete, this is great, man. Thank you so much. In the Easter season, we're going to be doing a 4-week class called Basic Bible. So if you have issues that have kept you from reading the Bible or struggles saying, I can't get into it, it's going to be a very elementary, easy class. A lot of discussion just like this. 4 weeks long, come to one, come to all of it, whatever you like. But that will be right after Easter, Basic Bible. Hope you'll join us for it. Thank you, Pete.
Gets you thinking. And I think that's the whole purpose, of getting you thinking, focused. Charles, we need to ask God to